About It Media 21. Please like, comment, and subscribe as you come in. We're going to talk hot topics, trending topics, what's going on in the world. Everyone for being here. Just allow me a few minutes to set myself up on this side, get my disclaimer going in. But thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk About It Media 21. Let's talk about it. There's a lot going on. And there's supposed to be some kind of announcement that's supposed to be made. We're going to get into that. But yeah, what's really going on in the world? We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Like the video as you guys come in. Just give me a few seconds to set myself up on this side. Come on in. Come on in. What do you think the announcement's going to be about? What's going on? Why are the media so distant? He's not able to answer questions close up for the last few days. What's really going on? All comments are alleged, period. Please like the video, period. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships, and research. Fair use is use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged, in our opinion, and for entertainment purposes only. Thanks for being here, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning.
White House is feeling a great deal of speculation this morning, teasing an announcement by President Trump this afternoon.
The president's schedule has been pretty light in the last couple of days, and people are wondering what's going on. Douglas Zader has been monitoring all of this from Washington. He joins us this morning as Congress is also getting to return to work after their holiday break, their summer break. Good morning, Doug. Let's start though with the president's schedule today. We're expecting something from the Oval Office today. What can you tell us?
Good morning. Well, the president has an announcement scheduled this afternoon. That's about all the White House will say about this. Now, Politico is reporting that this is defense-related. There's been a lot of speculation because the president's been not completely out of sight, but has been kind of uncharacteristically quiet in recent days. You know, he had that marathon, a 3-hour cabinet meeting last week, which was really something. I mean, just the length of this thing got a lot of attention last week. And then since then, relatively quiet as far as the public schedule is concerned. We did see, there's been some speculation about his health. We certainly saw him yesterday as he was returning from his golf course after playing golf, so he seems to be fine. But again, there is this report from Politico that this may be defense-related as the White House gets ready to have him come out this afternoon. I believe that's at 1 o'clock Central Time today.
And Doug, the other big topic today is Congress reconvening today. What are some of the tasks that are top of mind for Congress today as they get back together?
Well, for Congress in a whole, I mean, they have to figure out a funding deal to prevent a government shutdown at the end of the month. So September 30th, we could see a partial government shutdown. We've certainly been at this juncture a number of times in the past. Generally, this is resolved before we actually see a shutdown take place, but you never know, and we've certainly seen shutdowns before. The issue they're running into is really kind of a lack of trust on both sides. Republicans say that Democrats are trying to block their funding efforts. Democrats say they want to preserve government funding. They don't want to see any kind of cuts anywhere. So, therein you have the recipe for a possible shutdown, although it's generally in the best interest of both parties to avoid a shutdown because you never know which way the blame is going to fly there. So we'll see if cooler heads prevail and they reach some kind of an agreement ahead of this September 30th deadline.
Sure, yeah. It is back to business here as we hit September in Washington, D.C. We know your team will be all over at Washington. Thank you, Doug, from Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
Like the video as you guys come in. Like the video as you guys come in.
Look over the White House at this hour as we do talk about the rumors that have blown up all over social media regarding the whereabouts of President Donald Trump. The White House saying he is completely fine. Take a look right here at what I'm talking about. This shows the trending topics there on Twitter or X. Now, over the last several hours, there have been several variations of hashtag #WhereIsTrump. The reasoning is that the president is normally in front of the cameras near daily, making some kind of remarks and taking questions from reporters. His last real public appearance was a televised 3-hour meeting with his cabinet. We showed that to you here on Live Now from Fox. That was on Tuesday. For some, his Truth Social post last night about the appeals court ruling on tariffs was enough to calm the chatter, while others on social media expressed different conspiracy theories that it could have been a member of his staff who was posting. Well, this morning, take a look as Barack Ravid over at Axios posted a short time ago on social media, clearing up any rumors saying that he has talked with those in the know and President Trump is just fine. Here is Ravid's post right there, simply saying, quote, "A U.S. official tells me Trump is okay. We'll play golf later this morning." Now, he did also post this one just a short time later, saying a U.S. official does tell me here that the White House pool report shows pool photog snaps pic of POTUS in white polo, red MAGA hat, black pants. POTUS's motorcade began rolling at 8:45 a.m. So again, clearing up those rumors that are circulating all over social media. Well, now back to that Truth Social post from the president. A U.S. appeals court ruling Friday that most of President Trump's tariffs are illegal, undercutting his use of those tariffs as a key international economic policy tool. The court did allow the tariffs to remain in place through October 14th to give the Trump administration a chance to file an appeal with the Supreme Court. Here is what Trump wrote late yesterday in response to that ruling. You see it right there on your screen. I'm going to take the banner down so you can read it a little bit further. But that says, quote, "All tariffs are still in effect. Today, a highly partisan appeals court incorrectly said that our tariffs should be removed, but they know the United States of America will win in the end. If these tariffs ever went away, it would be a total disaster for the country. It would make us financially weak, and we have to be strong. The USA will no longer tolerate enormous trade deficits and unfair tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers imposed by other countries, friend or foe, that undermine our manufacturers, farmers, and everyone else. If allowed to stand, this decision would literally destroy the United States of America. At the start of this Labor Day weekend, we should all remember that tariffs are the best tool to help our workers and support companies that produce great made-in-America products. For many years, tariffs were allowed to be used against us by our uncaring and unwise politicians. Now, with the help of the United States Supreme Court, we will use them to benefit our nation and make America rich, strong, and powerful again. Thank you for your attention to this matter." Taking a live look over the White House once again as we continue to cover all of this, officials saying that President Trump is just fine as that hashtag #WhereIsTrump does continue.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. Like the video as you guys come in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Let's continue to get into some news. Thanks for being here and thanks for supporting the channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 50K. Let's continue.
Trump is not a perfect person. I did not vote for a perfect person. You did not vote when you voted for Joe Biden. I truly believe, though, that Trump has the best interests of Americans.
He's got the best interests of Putin. Putin and all the other dictators. That's who he wants. He doesn't care about us. He cares about his dictator friends.
Hey there again, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on the East Coast. I'm Stephanie Rule in for Nicole Wallace on this Labor Day. And it may have been summertime, but constituents were not taking it easy. Numerous Republican lawmakers were on the receiving end of serious frustration and straight-up anger from those they represent at recent in-person town halls. And many of these lawmakers were in states that voted overwhelmingly for Donald John Trump. I'm talking about Alabama and Ohio, where constituents slammed Trump's agenda items, things like cuts to Medicaid and the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, his harsh immigration crackdown, the federal takeover of Washington, D.C., and Donald Trump cozying up to dictators. Bottom line, the attendees were loud and clear, saying, "We do not want this." Take a listen at a little more of that anger just from this past week.
Trump is doing a great job as
Well, the Big Beautiful Bill was actually the Trump tax cut.
And I would also say that Trump is not a dictator. He's not going to be a dictator. You may think that. He may have joked about that. He wouldn't about that. That is his personality. I'm not a psychologist. But
You're not helping me. Believe me, you're not helping me. You need to take your head out of Trump's ass and start doing your representation of us.
One of the representatives who held a town hall last week, Barry Moore of Alabama, left the event he held in his home district last week through the back door. Moore denied that he had to slip out, saying, quote, "We left like any other event. I think we tried to engage and answer questions, but unfortunately, it got hijacked." But you don't have to take his word for it. Judge for yourself. without getting due process.
Citizen and non-citizen.
False. Lies. The 5th and 14th Amendments allow for it. The Supreme Court has backed it many times. Shame. Come on, Felicia.
Today, on Labor Day, that same anger we heard at town halls is being taken to the streets. More than 1,000 workers over billionaires events are planned nationwide, protesting against the ultra-wealthy and corruption, looking instead to unify working-class people. Today's protests are organized by the same group that led the massive protests on May 1st, and they write the following, quote, "Just like any bad boss, the way we stop the takeover is with collective action. We are May Day strong, working people rising up to stop the billionaire takeover, not just through the ballot box or the courts, but through building a bigger and stronger movement." The movement against Trump and his party's anti-democratic ways is where we start this hour with three of my all-time favorite gentlemen, the host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller, plus MSNBC senior political analyst and Texas resident Matt Dowd, and Princeton University professor and MSNBC political analyst Eddie Blahn. Mr. Miller, you get the first crack at this. Your reaction to Republican lawmakers getting it handed to them at a whole bunch of town halls.
Hey, girl. Well, it's good to be with you. They deserve it, getting it handed to them. They're doing so few of these. I do think it's making it easy for people who are really engaged and really upset right now to organize and get out to those events. And that's what you're seeing, right? Like, we don't, obviously, Alabama is a red state. That's overwhelmingly voting for Republicans. It doesn't mean that there aren't any Democrats in Alabama. There are Democrats. There are independents. There are people that are Republicans who are unhappy with what's happening in the administration. And those are the folks that are motivated to turn out right now. I think that the thing that is probably the most meaningful about this is, that's what really drives midterm elections. Energy, engagement, like which side is more motivated to act. Like you're seeing in these things that opponents of this administration, broadly defined, are the ones that are the most engaged right now. I think that is a good sign for opposition as we head into, I guess there'll be a couple elections this November and then mostly next November. So I think that's like the biggest takeaway. I'm not sure that you're going to see much change in behavior from these Republicans. They didn't, very few of them actually did town halls, and you can kind of see why.
Eddie, what do you think?
I completely agree. First of all, it's great to see you, Stephanie. I completely agree with Tim. I think this is a sign of, among a particular portion of the electorate, of deep disagreement with Trump's policies. I think that's only going to intensify as the tariffs begin to impact that grocery bill and the efforts to purchase goods for families and for children and the like. I think that's only going to intensify. But I've yet to see whether or not this is going to translate in terms of spying for some of these Republicans. As they see much more disagreement among the electorate with regards to Trump's policies, will that embolden them to disagree with Donald Trump? I don't think so. Will it give them some cover to create some distance between themselves and Donald Trump's policies? I don't think so. So it's good for the midterms, I think. But in terms of their relationship to Donald Trump, I don't think anything will change.
Dr. Dowd, let's go to Chicago, because that is a city where Donald Trump may be deploying troops next. It was also one of the sites of the protest today. And I want to share a bit of sound from a couple of people who are there. Are you concerned about the president possibly seeing tanks and National Guard members on our streets?
Absolutely. It's important to show up.
It's the only thing we have right now, because Congress is just not doing the job to stop it. So he has no checks and balances except us. That's it.
The people are the ultimate check on leadership. I'm pretty sure you agree with that, Matthew.
Yeah, as I listened to that and watched this over the course of the last few days, I just can't help but think how far afield Donald Trump and the Republican Party has moved from conservative principles. It used to be local control and states' rights was a huge plank of the conservatives. Not only that, was rule of law, global trade, balanced budgets, all of those things. They've thrown every conservative principle out, including this last one, which is local control in the midst of this. In my view, Donald Trump is only using this to try to distract from all of his horrible situation he is in. Not only if you just take the Epstein situation, with still so many unanswered questions, he's underwater on every major issue in the country right now. He's underwater on the economy. He's underwater on inflation. He's underwater on immigration. He's underwater on healthcare. He's underwater on education, which is why his approval numbers are lower today than they were in 2018 when the Republican Party was defeated across the country. And we saw some of this energy in advance of that today that we saw then that we see today in this.
But this is his sort of, I'm going to go to the urban areas, which is like, I'm going to go find black and brown people to blame for somebody else's problem in this. The American public just isn't accepting this, because until you deal with the fundamental issues that they're facing, which is not what Donald Trump is trying to act like it is in Washington, D.C. or Chicago or any other major city, it's the prices that they have, it's the economy, it's they can't sell their homes, it's the cost of health care. And I think until Donald Trump addresses those, which I don't think he wants to, which is why he's just...
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, you guys. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thanks for tuning in.
Acting in this, he continues to throw these things out to try to do that because he's deeply underwater.
Tim, Iowa is certainly the reddest of red states, but now we've learned in the last couple of days that Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, obviously Republican, is not going to seek re-election. We do not know why, but I think we all remember that town hall that she held in May when she responded to questions about Medicaid cuts, saying everyone will die. That did not go over well, and despite your feelings for this president, I know you still have a lot of Republicans on speed dial. What do you know about her recent decision not to seek re-election?
Sure, and especially in Iowa, I've done a couple of campaigns. I have a lot of friends that are working there. Look, I think this actually goes back to the Hegseth confirmation, really, more than the town hall. At the time, we might all roll our eyes at this because the Republicans always seem to fold in the Senate, but that doesn't mean that at least some of them weren't like really seriously contemplating their political choices. In the fallout from Trump's second election, he's nominating all these people that are clearly unqualified. For Ernst, I think she was hoping she might have been on the Secretary of Defense list. She gets passed over for a weekend Fox and Friends anchor. She has deep concerns, personal concerns about sexual assault in the military. He has allegations of sexual assault against him. Obviously, isn't going to take that very seriously. Has shown disrespect to women in service. And so there was a lot of pressure on her then to vote for him. And I think that she didn't really want to, just projecting a little bit from what I've heard from friends. And she ends up voting for him. And, here she is now in like this situation in the Senate where you just got to do whatever Donald Trump says. You have no independence. You're getting shouted down at town halls. It's not a fun job. So I don't have any sympathy for it. It's a job that she signed up for. But I think if you think about it in that context, it makes sense she's not going to run.
Adrian, first to you. I'd love to hear what J.B. Pritzker and the mayor of Chicago's pushback is specifically. What exactly do they say would be better help, would be more effective in combating crime, period, in Chicago?
So I'll start with your first question, Katie. Over the weekend, we heard from Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker as well as Mayor Brandon Johnson, both of them saying, yes, they will welcome help, just not this type of help. They're saying they do not need troops to help combat crime, instead pointing to funding that has been cut. Mayor Brandon Johnson has said multiple times, restore the funding that was in place to help with projects like crime prevention. That is one thing both the mayor and the governor agree on. And just moments ago, this block was shut off. We're in downtown Chicago. You couldn't even walk along the street or up and down the sidewalk because there were so many people here taking part in a rally they dubbed as Workers Over Billionaires. I spoke with the organizers and many just everyday people who showed up here who say they do not want billionaires to determine the path of this country. Here's some more of my conversation with two people who were here for that rally. Take a listen. Are you concerned about the presence of possibly seeing tanks and National Guard members on our streets?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important to show up.
It's the only thing we have right now because Congress is just not doing their job to stop him. So he has no checks and balances except us. That's it.
So that couple pretty concerned, as well as hundreds of others who were here who are now marching. I do want to underscore, you mentioned it in the intro to this story, that violent crime overall here in Chicago is down. That is against the backdrop of what has happened this holiday weekend. Since Friday, the city of Chicago has been tracking shootings, and there have been more than 50 people shot in the city, including 7 people killed. Among the victims, we're talking about a 14-year-old who was injured, as well as a 17-year-old who was injured. The latest mass shooting happened in the 1 o'clock hour this morning. So people here that we spoke with say, yes, they want to see crime reduced, but they say the best way to fight that is by restoring the funding. And I will point out, Katie, I spoke with an organizer of a nonprofit on the city south side who works with violence prevention. When there are tense situations in the city, his crew will go out. But because of those budget cuts, he had to cut a third of his staff, saying he lost more than $500,000. Overall, people want to see that money restored. It's something they say they can't say enough.
Let me ask you this. The Republicans and Donald Trump specifically are trying to argue, Adrian, that the Democrats are saying crime is okay, that they don't really want to fight crime, and that's what people believe as well, that they believe the president wants to restore order. Do you get Any sense of that on the street? Are people blaming Democrats for disorder and looking to Republicans to help restore it? Are they looking at both parties and saying neither one is very serious about this? They're both just playing politics? Are you hearing anything aimed at anyone beyond Donald Trump in the city of Chicago?
I can tell you about a conversation I had with a woman here just moments ago. I asked her, what is your message for President Trump? She said point blank, I don't have a message for the president. My message is for Congress. She said she wants Congress to do their job. And others have said Congress can take a stand and stop what they believe is an overarch of government. They're basically saying the president is misusing his, what they say, executive power. And folks here are not opposed to fighting crime. Nobody wants to see or be on the map for shootings in their city. They do want the crime to continue to go down, but they're saying that there are other ways to fight it, Katie.
All right, so Vaughn, that again is the argument from the president that the Democrats don't want to fight crime. Does he believe that he's got a winning hand on this issue? Maybe not in the city of Chicago, but is he looking to a national audience for this? What's the motivation?
Right, and he found a partner, a quasi-partner, you could say, in Mayor Muriel Bowser here of Washington, D.C., whose hands were effectively tied in terms of her cooperation, but just last week suggesting publicly that the federal law enforcement did help address crime here locally. But of course, that does not negate the other concerns that the D.C. mayor raised publicly, including that was the mere presence of National Guard figures and military vehicles on the streets of Washington, D.C., masked individuals, including from ICE and other law enforcement, federal law enforcement agencies that were not quite clear on the streets of Washington, D.C., and what impact that has at a city community level. And that is where you saw strong pushback in real time here, among others in D.C. as well as in Los Angeles. But that is where the president here this weekend in multiple social media posts said that if Pritzker does not address crime in his city, that, quote, we're coming, setting up the fact that he could very well send the National Guard and the other federal law enforcement into the streets of Chicago imminently. And I think that hits at the heart of the question as to exactly what is the goal and what is the purpose. You know, Kristi Noem over this weekend, Katie, suggested that Los Angeles would be gone if it were not for the National Guard and Donald Trump. Of course, that is so far from reality. We're talking about a couple block radius where the demonstrations and where the protests were actually taking place in Los Angeles. And when you're looking at, you know, what the end game here is, the administration hasn't quite laid that out. Unless you're leaving the National Guard in long term or the federal law enforcement, Pritzker suggested he would be eager to continue working with the FBI and ATF on specific cases, for example. But I asked Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff here at the White House on Friday, whether he had talked to President Trump, had a conversation with him about potentially invoking the Insurrection Act at some point, which would allow the military to be used for domestic law enforcement purposes. And despite trying to ask him that question 3 different times, he didn't answer. And I think that is hitting at the heart of the concern of a great many in the city of Chicago, for example, is if a stone is thrown, if there is an escalation between civilians and law enforcement, then what happens? Then what is the determination of the administration at that point?
Yeah, let me ask you about a little bit more of the politics of it. I think you laid out LA and Chicago really well. I'm going to put up on our screen a list of the most violent U.S. cities, and a number of them are in red states. St. Louis, Missouri, red state. Detroit, Michigan, red recently, you know. Louisiana, Monroe, Louisiana, red. New Orleans, Louisiana, red. Alexandria, Louisiana, red. Memphis, Tennessee, red. Cleveland, Ohio, red. And a lot of these have Democratic mayors, so it's a mixed control. But we're not seeing Donald Trump use the military or threaten the military in any one of these places. Vaughn, should we expect that to change, or are there other considerations involved here?
I don't think we have any reason to believe that it's going to change in short order. We don't know where this presidency is going to head over the next 3.5 years. Instead, we have seen him take on Baltimore and calling it a hellhole effectively. And of course, the crime stats in Baltimore and that city's journey over the last 2 decades doesn't reflect that either.
Like the video, like the video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button and continue to hit the like button. Thanks for being here, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk About It Media 21.
But look, I think that Nancy Mace is a good example. She's now running for governor of South Carolina. And well, there's not a South Carolina city specifically on that top 10 list. She was asked about sending in the National Guard, and she hedged on her commitment to an openness to sending in troops into the streets of some of these more Republican cities. The same thing with Speaker Mike Johnson, who hails from Louisiana. And so I think that is where you have seen a great many Republican lawmakers who have stepped back and not been as vocal on the federalizing of local law enforcement here in D.C., but also what their plans are for this administration moving forward. Because as you said, at some point, facts are going to run in the way and hit an intersection that runs perpendicular to that of the distorted presentation of American cities that this administration now for months has been trying to portray.
So, Barbara, what about the legal issue here? I mean, in talking about Los Angeles, Kristi Noem claiming falsely that LA wouldn't be standing. I think anybody who knows LA knows that couldn't possibly be farther from the truth, even if you don't think LA is a great place to be right now. The idea that those riots were anything consuming in that city is laughable, especially when you think back to bigger riots in LA. Even those were relatively contained. I'm thinking about the LA riots specifically, or even the Watts riots. Legally speaking, though, Donald Trump ran into some issues in California, in Los Angeles. Is he going to run into those same issues in Chicago or anywhere else?
Yes, Katie, I think it is likely that he will. He'll note that he hasn't actually done anything just yet in Chicago and these other cities, and it may be that his lawyers are searching for some authority to allow him to do that. He can't simply send the National Guard into various cities. In Los Angeles, he relied on an authority that allows him to quell a rebellion, and even there, he got some pushback from the courts that said, questioned his authority and whether there was a rebellion take place in LA or whether it was simply protesters that could be handled by the local police. In Washington, D.C., he used a different authority that creates a very special and unique situation with the city that serves as the seat of our federal government. And so that gave him some authority to act there. But in other cities, in the absence of some sort of rebellion or insurrection, he can't simply call up the National Guard to enforce ordinary criminal laws. That's a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which says that we leave law enforcement to local police departments and not to the military. So I don't think he can go into these cities unless there is some sort of insurrection. Now, of course, by baiting the public, by sending a strong show of force by ICE agents who do have the right to be anywhere they might be able to enforce immigration laws, they might ignite and escalate tensions such that there is some sort of rebellion or insurrection.
Good morning, Anonymous. Thanks for telling everyone to hit the like button. Let's get the likes up, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
That can justify the use of force. So I worry that he's baiting cities into creating some sort of social unrest so that he can send troops in to affect them. But make no mistake, this is gamesmanship by Donald Trump. I worked as U.S. Attorney in Detroit and Flint and other cities that have violent crime challenges, and I learned that surges of police might have a short-term successful effect or zero-tolerance programs. But to really change and make the meaningful changes that we're seeing today in a number of American cities, you have to attack the root causes of violent crime. That's poverty. If Donald Trump really wanted to do that, he would not have canceled the grants that were going out to community groups to reduce crime in April. And so this, to me, is a show of force. It is a political tactic designed to show that he's tough on crime and to bait Democrats into opposing him so that he can portray them as soft on crime.
Like the video.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Mel Zanona, senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security at the Bloomberg School of Public Health, Dr. Amish Adalja, and former Republican Congressman Charlie Dett, who represented the state of Pennsylvania. Dr. Adalja, first to you. There is a lot of confusion, as Marissa Parra was reporting, around the COVID vaccine. As a doctor, please straighten it out for us.
And this is the absolute worst case scenario because no one knows who should get a vaccine. No one knows who to trust. What I would say is that if anybody has any high risk condition, they should be getting the new vaccine when it's available. If you are a parent of a child and that child is less than 2 years of age and they have no risk factors for severe disease, even without any risk factors for severe disease, as you just heard, there is a high rate of hospitalizations. Those children should get vaccinated. And lastly, I would say pregnant women all need to be vaccinated with each pregnancy. There will be better guidance coming out from the professional societies, but the CDC guidance is likely to be very, very muddled and more confusing, leading to what's going on with these drugstores not actually offering vaccines.
So we're going to see RFK Jr., Mel, in front of Congress this week. And he's going to be sitting in front of a Senate panel that approved him, including Bill Cassidy, who said yes to his nomination and said yes to installing him as HHS director, but was very critical of him on vaccines and believed that he got an assurance from him on vaccines. Do we have an idea of how Bill Cassidy feels about the HHS director right now and whether he will have any interesting or tough questions for him later this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a testy hearing. It's going to be a timely hearing. We should point out that it had already been in the works prior to the CDC shakeup. Supposedly, the secretary is going to come in and testify on Trump's health agenda, but no doubt the senators are going to use this as an opportunity to grill him, the secretary, on the firings of the CDC, the resignations, what precipitated that, as well as his own views on vaccines. And I am particularly interested in what Republicans like Cassidy have to say, whether they still have confidence in the secretary and whether they regret voting for him, because Kennedy did renege on a number of promises that he specifically made to Cassidy in order to get that vote, that critical vote from Cassidy for his nomination. Kristen Welker did press another senator on that committee, James Lankford, a Republican from Oklahoma, about that very question. Here's what he had to say.
Do you have 100% confidence in Secretary Kennedy, Senator?
I could go through several of those things. I don't think he's limiting access to the COVID vaccine. It's still widely accepted. The challenge is it right for children to be able to have the COVID vaccine?
Do you have 100% confidence in Secretary Kennedy?
I believe he is who the president has picked. I don't think he's gone a wrong direction on this.
And so I think what you heard a little bit there was that Lankford, like many other Republicans, was really wary of getting on Trump's bad side. And Cassidy is in a difficult position because he is facing a primary challenge from the right. He's up for re-election next year. But over the last week, he has said that he's going to use his committee, another committee that he sits on, to conduct aggressive oversight. He's also been on social media pushing back on the secretary, pushing back on some of this anti-vaccine rhetoric. So he's going to be definitely one to watch as Congress comes back this week, Katie.
Let me, Charlie, show you what Bill Cassidy reposted on social media. He was reposting a Caroline Leavitt post discussing Trump and RFK Jr.'s commitment to restoring trust and transparency and credibility to the CDC. Then he added this. The president and secretary are right. We need radical transparency. We need to protect the health of our children. The two go together. I'm committed to the president's vision, which is why the Help Committee will conduct oversight. So what is your expectation for not the Democrats? I know where the Democrats are going to go, but where the Republicans are going to go, given that tweet, given what you just heard from James Lankford?
Well, it strikes me that most Republicans, if you were to talk to them privately, would tell you that RFK Jr. is a disaster. Most Republicans that I know support vaccines for polio, for measles, for COVID, and for the flu. And we have an HHS secretary who doesn't seem to support those things, or is very half-hearted in his support, which is troubling because the American people want to trust what they're hearing from the CDC and HHS, which has been the gold standard for a very long time. It's not just people in the United States who look to us for guidance on matters of health. It's people throughout the world who don't have CDCs, who need this type of expertise. And the fact that there's this assault on all these folks at the CDC,
good morning,
who have doctors behind their names, suggests that we are moving away from science, data, and evidence, and towards something that's much more troubling and unscientific.
Charlie, help me understand the motivation. When you're talking about not just this COVID vaccine, you're talking more broadly about vaccines that have saved kids' lives, vaccines that have saved kids from horrible, not deformities, horrible, what's the word I'm looking for, Dr. John? Not diseases, et cetera, from horribly painful lives, polio, et cetera. What is the thinking of Republicans who will tell you privately they think this is a bad idea, but publicly they'll say okay to it and then continue to put these kids' lives in danger? I don't understand that.
But I think a lot of them would love to see RFK Jr. fired. I just have to believe that. I mean, and by the way,
why would they not come out and grill him on Capitol Hill and demand that?
I hope they do this week. Kennedy has certainly provided them an opening. But talk to Mitch McConnell about polio vaccinations. He experienced polio as a child. He's been, I think, pretty outspoken. And there have been some others. I mean, George Washington, for heaven's sake, was trying to immunize his soldiers during the Revolutionary War from smallpox. I mean, so this is, the science of vaccinations I thought was settled. And I'm saying this as a non-scientist. My daughter's a physician, by the way. But I'd just like to say that I am just, as a Republican, I am just disturbed that we are somehow ignoring experts, and we are ignoring real data and science and in exchange for a guy who's been a Democrat his whole life and who's been pushing quackery and, frankly, a trial lawyer agenda.
It's not just, as I said, Dr. Adalja, the COVID vaccine. It's vaccines more broadly. What are we seeing across the spectrum?
Basically, this is a wholesale assault on vaccines. Secretary Kennedy doesn't even believe in the germ theory of disease, so he does not believe that there's any value to vaccines. And what he's doing is basically dismantling the entire vaccine ecosystem with the tremendous power he has as HHS secretary. And he's doing it very deliberately and tactically. He's taking it apart piece by piece to make it really hostile for vaccine developers or anybody that wants to get a vaccine. And I think what we're going to see is this coming back to haunt us. We already have record-breaking measles cases already with 3 deaths in the United States. We will see increases in other vaccine-preventable diseases as people don't get vaccines or turn away from vaccines. And he's dismantling the CDC and making it probably what will be an organ for anti-vaccine disinformation when he installs his cronies there. So this is a really, really horrible time when it comes to infectious disease preparedness. If we are to get another infectious disease outbreak, epidemic, pandemic, we're not going to see anything like Operation Warp Speed. It's going to be a disaster with RFK Jr. at the helm.
And it's amazing because Operation Warp Speed was spearheaded by President Trump. It was a signature achievement by him. And instead of, touting it and saying, look what I did, I got this vaccine out there. I rushed it through and it saved lives. It was effective. He's now done a complete 180 on it and claims that it's dangerous and wants to see the data that, again, everyone has already seen. Mel Zanona, Dr. Adalja, and Charlie Dent. Thank you. Charlie, don't go anywhere.
Joining us now, ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, California Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia. Congressman, thanks for being with us on a holiday. Members of your committee will meet privately tomorrow with victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Here's what Chair Comer said about that.
The Trump administration is cooperating with us. We're bringing in the families and the attorneys of the victims Tuesday afternoon to talk to the House Oversight Committee. This will be Republicans and Democrats because we're going to make this information public. That's what the American people want. When we travel around all of our districts, that's one of the things that people ask. When are we going to see the Epstein files? But it's very complicated because there are victims of the Epstein files, and we want to listen to those victims and their families and their attorneys to see how best can we present this information.
So Comer there seems to suggest that this will be a bipartisan approach in speaking with the victims, trying to figure out how to best handle their information. Do Democrats and Republicans agree about what it means to be transparent in this situation? Do you see a bipartisan effort here?
I mean, look, there's been some bipartisanship when Democrats forced the release of the Epstein files, and we actually got a few Republicans to vote with us because they really weren't interested and have not been interested in transparency. I will be there with Chairman Comer. There'll be other Democrats and Republicans as we listen to the victims. I've said from day one, they have to be centered in what is happening right now. There have been horrific crimes, sexual abuse, trafficking that has happened to these women, in some cases children. And so we are very focused on transparency for the American public. We don't understand why Attorney General Bondi, why the White House continue to stonewall the full release of the documents. We have sent the subpoena out. Those documents should be in our hand. Now, this week, we're going to hear from a lot of the actual victims. We look forward to that. It's also very important that people remember the horrific tragedy and violence that they all endured.
It is important. And to that point, Ro Khanna, they're teasing that explosive press conference that we may see on Wednesday. How do you make sure that these victims are not being essentially exploited for political gain by either party?
Look, I think that's obviously really important. We have been, the Oversight Committee, certainly those of us Democrats, have been working very carefully with the families, with the representatives of any victims. Ro Khanna, of course, is a member of our committee. And so we're all working at the end of the day to ensure that we get justice for the victims and that, most importantly, they are protected in the ways that they need to be protected. And so that has been our focus, and we've been fighting for transparency. We don't understand why the White House continues to cover this up and why Donald Trump, after campaigning years on this topic, has now flip-flopped. And so I hope that the work that happens this week, that the stories that everyone's going to hear from the victims at the press conference, at the roundtable that we're having tomorrow, I hope that motivates not just the White House, but our Republican colleagues to fully support bipartisan transparency as it relates to the Epstein files.
The Oversight Committee has also now requested suspicious activity reports from the Treasury Department related to Jeffrey Epstein. These SARs, as they're called, have to do with red flags that may have been missed in Epstein's financial transactions. What do you hope maybe learn from them? And is this just another continuation of the drip, drip, drip of information that we are getting as opposed to just a full dump of the files?
At the end of the day, I think that what we want are the full files, and that clearly continues to be stonewalled. I appreciate any additional efforts that we can achieve in the relation to transparency. The more that we can get, the more documents. If there are concerns, and certainly I share those around the way this case has been handled, and certainly there's concerns the way Alex Acosta, Trump's former labor secretary, who put together Jeffrey Epstein's original sweetheart deal, how that all came to be, what the government has known, what we have in our possession as it relates to documents, all of that information should be available to the public. When I have been home the last few days, and I'm talking to folks here in the community, everyone is asking me, when are the full files going to be released? They don't care who's on the list. They don't care how powerful those people are or what political party that they're in. They just want justice for the victims, and they want the truth.
All right, and I know that you've been pushing to get that so-called birthday book published in your hands. What are you hoping to glean from that? President Trump has said that those alleged drawings that he may or may not have sent to Jeffrey Epstein were fake, that he didn't do that. So what do you hope is in that birthday book that you may glean some more information from?
Well, I mean, to be clear, the president has said that the drawing and note that he wrote to Epstein doesn't exist. We know it exists. It's been reported on. It is apparently in this book and other documents. And so from what we understand, we'll be receiving that birthday book and note as well as other documents within about a week. And so around September 8th is the date that we have been told. And so we're glad the Epstein estate is moving forward and producing these documents. And I think that Donald Trump clearly is being caught in another lie. A book is going to be produced. We're going to release it to the public that he's saying doesn't exist. So we're all kind of anticipating that release over the week.
As I'm sure you know, Politico is reporting that FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi are expected to testify before a House Judiciary Committee in the coming weeks. What do you hope your colleagues are going to ask them?
I'm glad to see it. And everyone should be asking, particularly Pam Bondi, the same question. Attorney General, you said you had the Epstein files on your desk, that they had been reviewed. Why the huge turnaround? Why the cover-up? Why completely just change your position on the release? And I think that the FBI director, in the same fashion, has been someone that's been calling for the release of the files for years before he was in the government. And so they should align with their position that they've had for years that had been Donald Trump's, which is a full release of the Epstein files. That is what the American public are demanding, and that's certainly what those of us on the Oversight Committee are demanding as well.
Congressman, why do you think the files haven't been released yet?
Well, obviously someone's trying to hide something. I mean, the White House clearly doesn't want the files released because there's information in there that they don't want out to the American public. What that is, who that involves, I think are the questions. And I think that the American public deserves the answers. Why all of this cover-up is what a lot of us are asking ourselves. We don't understand. And so it's time to release the files. Pam Bondi has them. I hope she's asked those questions when she appears in front of the Senate. And certainly this week we'll hear from all the victims and, of course, uplift whatever they have to say.
What do you say to the critics who want you and your colleagues to focus on those bread and butter issues that Americans are dealing with, higher prices for things, and not being able to afford the cost of living and housing prices? What do you say to them? And they feel like this may be somewhat of a distraction to score political points on both sides.
I mean, look, I think what's really important is that and the American public knows this. The single most important issue right now, of course, is lowering the cost for the American public. It's ensuring that people have access to health care. I mean, those.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for subscribing. Like the video as you guys come in.
Authoritarian ambitions, but in an exclusive new interview with the Daily Caller, Trump was asked whether he'd be comfortable seeing former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan arrested live on television as part of his administration's new focus on the Russia election interference investigation. His response would not bother me at all. That attitude, punishing perceived enemies while rewarding devotees, is exactly what we're seeing across the federal government. At the Centers for Disease Control, Trump has already installed a new hand-picked loyalist, a business investor with no medical training, to replace a career scientist to run your nation's top public health agency. Then there's the Federal Reserve, where emergency hearings are underway right now after Trump's attempt to oust Fed Board Governor Lisa Cook over alleged mortgage fraud, even though she has not been charged with any crime. But the aim is clear: get her out so he can put in a loyalist. And that's become Trump's playbook across the government, forcing out officials at the CIA, the Department of Transportation, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, institutions where nonpartisanship is essential to what they do as their lifeblood. Trump is also ramping up his war on blue cities, manufacturing crisis after crisis as a means to seize more power. In addition to National Guard deployments, Trump is threatening new immigration crackdowns in Boston and Chicago using agents from ICE and Border Patrol, agencies whose budget Trump tripled this year. And if you're wondering how far he intends to take this, well, folks, here's your president in his own words.
So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. But I'm not a dictator. I would get the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States. If I think our country's in danger, and it is in danger in these cities, I can do it. And they say, we don't need him. Freedom, freedom. He's a dictator. He's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator.
Joining us now, Executive Chair of the Democracy Defenders Fund and former White House ethics czar under President Obama, Norm Eisen, former federal prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst Joyce Vance, and former DHS Chief of Staff during Donald Trump's first term and author of Blowback, Miles Taylor. Miles, I want to start with you because the president saying, I have the right to do anything I want to do. I'm the president of the United States should be ringing off alarm bells for more than just us at this table and at home on this panel. It feels like that's not happening. What do you think is going on?
Incredibly, Eugene, I think people still aren't taking him seriously, but we saw him make the same comments 5 years ago. I mean, during the COVID pandemic, we all remember when Donald Trump said, when you are the president of the United States, the authority is total, and that's the way it's got to be. And his allies at the time said, well, look, it's just a figure of speech. He's just joking. We've been saying that for far too long. Donald Trump is not joking. And even with this interview with the Daily Beast about Comey and Brennan, I don't know if he's going to try to arrest Comey and Brennan. He's going to try to arrest his enemies, though. He's under withering pressure to do that. And whether you think he's got cases or he doesn't have cases, to him, it does not matter. He has to put people in handcuffs. At least in his mind, that's what he thinks has to happen. But it's so much bigger than that. I mean, the revenge, Eugene, as you already noted, extends to people's cities. It extends to their money. He's going into places like Chicago. If he pushes Lisa Cook out of the Fed, it's just a step away from him fully taking over the Fed. And I think a lot of Americans don't understand what that actually means. But we have a really, really clear playbook of what happens when a would-be authoritarian takes over monetary policy in a country. And it typically results in runaway inflation, increase in the price of goods, destabilization of the economy, and capital flight. People will stop investing in the United States, the US dollar will suffer, and your average American will see their savings account become worthless. That's what it means. And that's why people need to realize Trump's revenge campaign is not some abstract thing that doesn't affect them.
I do want to stay on the topic of Lisa Cook for a minute. Norm, can you explain to us what exactly the state of play is with Ms. Cook and whether or not she's going to be able to maintain her job? I mean, it does, not to be dramatic here, but it does sound like the potential stability of the global economy sort of hangs in the balance. Because, I mean, if she is ousted, Trump puts in an appointee, he gets what he wants in terms of lowering interest rates. I mean, it could send the markets into some red zone.
And Norm, you are one of her lawyers.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much you're allowed to disclose, but we'd love to hear what's going on.
Jackie, at Democracy Defenders Fund, we have over 125 legal matters, including representing Lisa Cook together with the great folks at Lowell and Associates. I think on that case, because it is active litigation, as much as I love y'all, I'm going to say we filed some powerful complaint, brief. We had a lengthy argument in court last week, and we'll be filing another submission on Tuesday morning, and I'm going to rest on those arguments and the papers.
But in terms of you having the ability to clear the, state the facts, clear the record, did she commit mortgage fraud as the Trump administration is alleging?
I'm just going to stick with what we've said in argument and what we've said in the papers. Keep a sharp eye out Tuesday morning. We'll have another very hard-hitting filing for you.
Should bring us the news here first. But I also, Joyce, there was another thing that happened this week when it comes to the rule of law, and that was that a federal judge, Geopolitical, ruled that the Trump administration cannot use expedited removal of undocumented immigrants in the way that they wanted to, which would allow them to fast-track the deportation process. And expedited removal, meaning that they wouldn't have to have a hearing, is why the administration wanted to do that. And Judge Geopolitical, in her ruling, said that, quote, the government makes a truly startling argument that those who enter the country illegally are entitled to no process under the Fifth Amendment, but instead must accept whatever grace Congress affords them. Were that right, not only non-citizens, but everyone would be at risk. Fortunately, that is not the law. When you're looking at this ruling, Joyce, what exactly do you think this means for the future of due process in the country?
Well, this is a case, pardon me, this is a case that's incredibly important, and it got lost a little bit in the press of news this week. For decades, people who arrive at the border without documentation can be summarily returned to their point of origin. That's the way that process has worked. The Trump administration is trying to expand that sort of expedited removal and make it happen further in from the border, often with people who have been here, in their words, people who can't prove that they've been here for more than 2 years. And of course, that proof can be very difficult if you're here without documentation. So this is part of their effort to ramp up their statistics so that they can claim political success. But the impact, and this is what Judge Cobb wrote so eloquently about, is it puts all of us at risk. We've seen this in some of the earlier deportation roundups. They pick folks up, they're not careful to check whether they're American citizens or not, whether they're green card holders or not, and they deport people with little or no recourse. That means that a denial of due process to people who don't have documented immigration status denies all of our due process potentially, and this case is definitely one to watch.
Miles, I want to throw up this retruth that Trump did. It says the world will soon understand nothing can stop what's coming. It has a Q+ on his hand. I think that's a nod to the QAnon conspiracy theory. It doesn't seem like he created this. Maybe he did, but this is, a retruth. What does it say that the president does this? It feels like sometimes that he and his team want us all to freak out about it. But then with all of the actions that are happening, it's hard to not see this as part of a strategy.
Well, I think we can safely assume we're not going to see the administration moderate anytime soon. I think anyone who had on their bingo card that Donald Trump was going to tack towards the center and be a unifier is going to lose that game of bingo. So, look, a lot of times when he does things like this on social media, it's bluster. And yet there are certainly a lot of very shocking policy decisions in the pipeline. And you've seen other Trump allies in recent days post similar things. Laura Loomer, a few days ago, posted something very similar, warning about what was coming. In that case, making reference to journalists who are trying to protect their sources. And I've been saying for a while now that it's likely going to happen, that we see the Trump administration going after journalists, going after their sources, and threatening them that if they don't give up those sources in news stories that were damaging to the president, that they'll try to throw them in jail. And they're going to try to open up Espionage Act cases over this. That's my assessment. I think it's probably going to bear out. But, look, you have to look no further than Chicago to see how dramatic that this could get. Eugene, we've talked about this almost every Sunday the past few weeks, but it seems like every time I come on and join you guys, there's a new city that the United States military is planning to head to under Donald Trump. Now, it's not totally clear yet that the military is going to go to Chicago. It doesn't escape my imagination that they're going to deploy the National Guard. But what you will hear this week is people talking more about the Insurrection Act, because Chicago is going to be the first place where we really see an initial resistance to boots on the ground. And that's the Trump card, so to speak, that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller have hinted at for years, is using the Insurrection Act to allow the military to enforce the laws of Chicago and depriving those local leaders of any say whatsoever. Whether or not they do that this week remains to be seen, but that conversation is going to start again this week in earnest.
Who's ready
to hatch some cool
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Please hit the subscribe button, you guys. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Janet Yellen is a pioneer in the annals of Washington. She's the first woman to head the Federal Reserve as well as the United States Treasury. She's the first person in American history to have led the Fed, the Treasury, and the White House Council of Economic Advisors. Born in Brooklyn and educated at Brown, she went on to Yale University to earn her PhD in economics. She was an assistant professor at Harvard when she began working at the Federal Reserve Board in the 1970s. By the 1980s, she had joined the faculty at the University of California at Berkeley, where she researched, along with her fellow economist husband, why companies would pay more than they needed to hire and retain their employees. The research found that businesses were rewarded with higher productivity when they offered better pay and working conditions. In 1994, President Bill Clinton appointed Yellen to the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors. 3 years later, Clinton named Yellen the chair of his Council of Economic Advisors. In 2004, she returned to the Fed to serve as the Federal Reserve Bank of the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. And that's when she was given when America's housing bubble popped in 2008 and triggered a financial crisis that led to the worst recession since the Great Depression. In 2010, President Barack Obama appointed Janet Yellen vice chair of the Federal Reserve, and in 2013, Obama nominated Yellen to be the Fed chair, an office she held until 2018. That's when President Donald Trump, in his first term in office, decided against renominating Yellen to lead the Fed and instead nominated today's current Fed chair, Jerome Powell. Yellen later went on to serve as President Joe Biden's Treasury Secretary from 2021 until January of this year. Now the Fed is front and center in the news with President Trump back, this time openly threatening the independence of America's central bank. He's publicly chastised the chairman, Powell, for not heeding his call to slash interest rates. Trump has accused Powell of mismanaging funds during the renovation of the Fed headquarters in Washington and threatened to fire him for cause, which is the only way a Fed chair can actually be forced out before his term ends next year. Trump has already fired Lisa Cook,
Like the video, like the video.
Lisa Cook, a Fed governor, who the president accuses of mortgage fraud. Cook says she will contest Trump's move in court and has refused to step down. In a way, Janet Yellen was the opening salvo of President Trump's attempts to reshape the Fed into his political tool. Up until Yellen, it was standard practice for presidents to nominate sitting Fed chairs to serve additional terms. Trump broke that then and is now going much farther to shatter old norms and to seize control of the Fed. All this as the Fed's dual mandate of managing inflation and promoting full employment is starting to show real strain as the economy today encounters both rising prices and weaker hiring, fueled in part by the president's trade agenda. Joining me now is Janet Yellen, economist, former United States Secretary of the Treasury, former chair of the Federal Reserve from 2014 to 2018. She is now a distinguished fellow in residence at the Brookings Institution, and a really hard person to interview because I don't know what title to use with you because you have all the titles. So welcome, Janet Yellen, to our show.
Thanks so much, Ollie. Thanks for the invitation.
Let's talk first of all about this thing that is an abstraction to most people who don't study it, the independence of the Fed, which is a model that has been copied around the world. The idea that the Federal Reserve should not be subject to political whims. It's really important because all presidents would like high growth and low interest rates, right, in all countries. If you mess with that, there are potentially very, very serious consequences.
Yes, we've seen that in many countries because politicians tend to use monetary policy for political purposes, either to win elections or, in many cases, to try to reduce the cost of financing large deficits or outstanding debts. And what President Trump has said, the reason that he wants to influence the Fed is the United States has a $37 trillion outstanding debt. The interest cost on that is around $1 trillion. And if we could get interest rates down, that service cost would fall meaningfully. And this is a thought that many heads of state have had and thought, let's pressure our central bank to do exactly that, lower interest rates. It juices the economy, gets down interest expense. And this is the basic recipe for high inflation or hyperinflation. We've seen this very recently in countries like Turkey, which just a year or so ago had around an 80% inflation rate, and a year or so ago also in Argentina with similarly high inflation. And of course, we can go back to Germany in the 1920s or Hungary after World War II. In every case,
It's a central bank that is an independent, a head of state that wants low interest rates or wants to be able to have its central bank buy up the debt and print money. And this is the recipe for runaway inflation. So Americans need to worry about that, and especially because the dollar is the bedrock currency, and U.S. Treasuries, the fundamental safe asset in the entire global financial system. All of that rests on good management of monetary policy. And as you said,
with Liberty Mutual, you can customize and save.
Oh, I think your hat's
Like the video, fair use. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Please like the video as you guys come in. Don't forget to continue to hit the subscribe. We should be at 100 subscribers for today. Please hit the like button. We should have 50 likes. Hit the like. Thumbs up above the video, below the video.
Doesn't mean the central bank sets its own goal or goals. In the United States, Congress has mandated legally the goals of price stability and maximum employment. In many countries around the world, it's similar. Always price stability or low inflation is a mandated goal. And what independence means is that the technocrats at the central bank use economic reasoning data to try to figure out what are the best settings of monetary policy to achieve these goals, free of political interference. And that is what President Trump is putting at risk. And there will be a cost to every American that could be profound if this is allowed to happen.
So part of you've obviously had a great deal of experience with recessions. We have several of them. You also started your career at the Fed in the midst of inflation, but we don't have as much of a memory of inflation in the United States. But in terms of the toolbox available to the central bank, to the Federal Reserve, inflation, long-term out-of-control inflation, is a much bigger problem. We actually have pretty good tools to fix recessions. You get some creative destruction, but you can lower interest rates, you can flood the zone, and you can get the economy back on track. You get stuck in long-term inflation, it can ruin your country.
Well, it can be very difficult to bring inflation down when it becomes ingrained because, and this we've seen this in the 1970s and early 80s in the United States, when you have chronic high inflation, households, workers, businesses come to expect it, and they base their pricing decisions on the notion it will continue. And it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then the only way to really get it down is to really hit the economy with weak conditions, high unemployment, to really force inflation down and eventually bring inflation expectations down with it. And Volcker, some people may remember in 1982 or 83, he was faced with very high inflation. He said, I'm going to change this and show people this is going to come to an end. And we had one of the deepest recessions of the post-war period, but he did succeed in bringing it down, and he established credibility for the Federal Reserve, which it has prized and taken very seriously, that it has an obligation to anchor inflationary expectations at a low level, at levels consistent with price stability, or the Fed's interpretation is 2%, according to the price index that they measure inflation by.
New reaction today as President Trump targets more American cities for possible National Guard deployment. Here's Maryland's governor.
If the President of the United States were to have a serious conversation with me and say, what can we do, particularly when you look at the cost of the National Guard of well over $1 million a day, what could we actually do? Do you know what I would tell him? I would tell him things like, we need to make sure we're increasing funding for local law enforcement, and we have to invest in our community groups and community organizations. Like, that's a serious approach, how to address this issue. But asking me to deploy my National Guard, people who are not trained for municipal policing, is just not a serious approach.
And this comes as federal authorities prepare to flood Chicago in just a few days. Well, joining me now is National Action Network President and host of Politics Nations here at MSNBC, Reverend Sharpton. Good to see you, my friend, on this Labor Day weekend. So, Rev, you have Maryland Governor Wes Moore there, who seems to be taking a harder line against Trump. A headline, in fact, in the Washington Post marks this shift, reading, "Why Maryland's governor leaned into a fight with Trump. This one is personal." What's your takeaway, Rev, from his remarks and what might have caused Moore to change his tone?
I think that what Moore is changing his tone, or appears to be, is consistent with his position all along, and that is that there is clear evidence, clear data that says crime is going down in Baltimore and other places that the president has mentioned. and now he's using the whole question of going after immigrants, people that are migrants that are here, using ICE to really come into these cities. And these cities are certainly showing that they can rise to the occasion of bringing down crime and dealing with the question of immigration. And I think that what the president has done and has done consistently is go after cities with black mayors, and in the state of Maryland, a black governor.
Well, local leaders in Chicago are certainly bracing for a wave of ICE and Border Patrol agents sometime this week amid some very vocal pushback. Listen to this.
What his ultimate desire is to come into our city, to break the Constitution, and to break our democracy, and to break our city. He is reckless and out of control. He is the biggest threat to our democracy that we've experienced in the history of our country.
Orange County is back. Breaking all the rules, breaking all the rules. And so is she.
I'm Gretchen Rossi.
This bitch has gone after me for 12 years. This is gonna be fun. In Orange County.
Are you currently keeping any secrets?
It's just amazing how she
Like the video, like the video.
In the history of our country.
Chicago Mayor Johnson there. So are all of these decisions from Trump leading further away from democracy into autocracy? I mean, what is the message that the administration is sending, Rev?
The message is that the president is seeking to be what he joked about, or was he joking, is the question about a dictatorship. Isn't it ironic that the Republican Party and the conservatives in general were the ones saying that national government should not interfere with states? They were the states' rights party. And now all of a sudden, they want national government to do exactly that. So this is clearly an overreach, and it will not protect citizens from either those that are criminal that have been here as immigrants or those that are committing crimes in these cities. The real question is, why is this president being very selective? Crime rates are higher in the home borough or the home district of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, than it is in the whole state of Maryland, in Baltimore or in Chicago. Why aren't we sending National Guard there? Why aren't we sending ICE other places? Why is this being so selective? So he's trying to feed red meat to his base, and he's trying to, in my opinion, profile blacks in higher office.
So Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson was recently on Morning Joe, where he was unclear whether he would welcome federal funding for law enforcement. Take a listen, Rev.
Do you believe the streets of Chicago would be safer if you got all of those other extraordinary programs put back into place, which do have a history of being successful, if that's complemented by having 5,000 more cops on the streets of Chicago?
I don't believe that we should narrow it down to just police officers. That's what I'm saying. That is an antiquated approach. I'm saying we've invested in detectives.
Mr. Mayor, are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm agreeing with you that all of these other social programs are extraordinarily important. I just need a yes or a no.
What's your takeaway from that exchange, Rev?
My takeaway is that clearly the mayor, who will be on Politics Nation today, is saying that you cannot deal with an end result without dealing with root causes, because then you're only going to be getting the same results. They need to have programs funded. They need local police funded. When you see cities where they've taken away $1 billion from what is needed in the city in terms of these areas that they claim they're concerned about, then how is the remedy to bring in federal officers, law enforcement, or designated by the federal government? Are we trying to find a solution, or are we trying to scapegoat people for a problem that all of us are concerned about? And there is documented evidence that we have been dealing adequately in some of these cities, the ones he's named, all of these cities, they've been adequately taking crime down and doing what they're supposed to do in terms of dealing with immigrants.
Okay. Thank you, Rev. Appreciate your time as always.
Like the video, like the video. Fair use reaction clip. Like the video as y'all come in.
This is the Labor Day edition of the Midas Touch podcast. We've got a lot to discuss. Donald Trump looks extremely unwell. The proof of life videos and photos the White House is trying to put out are pretty unconvincing. I mean, he looks absolutely terrible in those photos. They claim that he was out golfing the other day with former coach Gruden, but
Those photos were taken actually on August 23rd. So they've been posting a lot of old photos and then saying, here's Donald Trump today. I saw another one. They were showing the Alabama-Georgia football game from last season, and they were trying to pretend that that was, or at least imply that Donald Trump was going to college football games, which he was not doing. And so a lot of suspicious things going on there. And of course, we've seen Donald Trump's rotting hands and those massive ankles. The White House claims that it's a minor issue, but many doctors are speculating, again, it's just pure opinion, that it appears to be serious cardiovascular and or kidney and or liver issues. But again, just opinions. You can't actually make that diagnosis. But as Donald Trump appears to be physically rotting both inside and out before our eyes, he's rotting the United States of America. He's screwing our economy. He is screwing our alliances abroad. There's been major meetings taking place over the past few days in China with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi. They're on video quite literally laughing at the United States of America. I mean, that's what this video that they released is intended to show. For those listening on audio, we're showing you Modi, Putin, and Xi Jinping laughing together at the United States. Modi hadn't visited China for about 7 years. Donald Trump is now a source of national embarrassment and humiliation for India based on the way the United States has been treating Modi and India, raising the tariffs against India to 50% and frankly slandering and defaming India, while also inviting over to the White House Chief of Staff Munir of the Pakistani military after Trump's family crypto endeavor, World Liberty Financial, received a huge amount of money from the Pakistani crypto fund. Speaking of World Liberty Financial's meme coin or Bitcoin or whatever the hell you even want to call it, it traded publicly today for the first time. On its first day of trading, at least as of this recording, it was down 21.7%, even with people knowing that the Trump family is the one backing World Liberty Financial. And this has been a vehicle where, like, Pakistan gave lots of money to, and others have as well. We're going to cover that. We should cover just the continuing cruelty of this Trump regime. They tried to deport 600 Guatemalan orphans, kids between the ages of 10 to 16, don't have parents, tried to send them off to Guatemala in the middle of the night. They were to return to Guatemala. Most likely they would have serious harm done to them, or they could die, or they don't have family members there. The Trump regime's like, oh, no, we're reuniting the family, which is a complete and utter lie based on the declarations that were submitted. A federal judge had to expedite the hearing and make, because...
Like the video, fair use reaction clip.
This was all trying to be done at like 1 a.m. or 3 a.m., and the federal judge blocked what the Trump regime was doing. And then Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney turned #2 at the DOJ, Todd Blanche, and others in the whole MAGA ecosystem was all like, the radical leftist judge, is ruling against us. We tried to get rid of those 600 Guatemalan orphans. We wanted to get rid of them orphans. Why are you being so quick? Like, what? The cruelty is the point, but it's also so despicable to see that being done in the name of the United States. Another ruling that occurred at the end of last week that we haven't been able to talk about on the Midas Touch podcast, of course. We did lots of hot takes on it, and we covered it on Legal AF, but I'll just mention here, the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals making a 7-4 ruling that Trump's quote-unquote reciprocal tariffs against the world are unlawful. Trump does not have emergency powers to tariff the world. That will now go up to the United States Supreme Court. The tariffs remain in place until the Supreme Court makes its ruling. We'll cover that and more here on this Labor Day edition of the Midas Touch podcast. Brett, Jordy, so great to see you. So great to be with the Midas Mighty on Labor Day.
Excuse me. Have you heard of this company?
Yes,
Like the video. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, you guys. Please hit the subscribe button. Let's continue.
Podcast. Brett, Jordy, so great to see you. So great to be with the Midas Mighty on Labor Day.
So great to see you too, and so great to see you, Midas Mighty.
Like the video as you guys come in. If you guys don't know, it's being reported that they're supposed to make an announcement today. What do you think the announcement will be? Like the video, fair use.
18 past the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro recently reversed a long-standing policy banning open carry in the...
Like the video as you guys come in.
How long you can keep them there, and what kind of duties they can be performing. It is against this law, known as Posse Comitatus, a late 1800s law that said that the...
Okay, right to our breaking news. A major court loss for the Trump administration. A federal judge says President Trump's use of the National Guard in Los Angeles was illegal.
The judge ruling the deployment violates the Posse Comitatus Act, and he warns President Trump's calls to send troops into other American cities would amount to a national police force with the president as its chief. Before this ruling, Trump teased that Chicago is next on his list for troops. The administration is already planning to surge federal resources for immigration arrests there. Chicago's mayor has taken preemptive steps to try and rein in any federal action President Trump takes. For more on all of this, we are joined by NBC senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley and immigration attorney Alan Orr. So Julia, what else are we hearing from this judge? How big of a deal is this ruling?
Well, it's a big ruling when you think about how Trump wants to use the National Guard next. He's already toyed with the idea of possibly sending them to Chicago, something that leaders in that state of Illinois have pushed back on, as well as the mayor of Chicago. And this is also something that we've seen in D.C., although he did...
Like the video, like the video.
Also something that we've seen in D.C., although he did have more authority, he has authority over the D.C. National Guard because of its position as the capital city. But since Trump started deploying the National Guard in L.A., which he said was to quell unrest after protests there that started because of ICE arrest, there's been a question about whether or not the president has the authority to call in the state's National Guard. Governor Gavin Newsom said he did not, and whether or not how long he can keep them there, and what kind of duties they can be performing. It is against this law known as Posse Comitatus, a late 1800s law that said that the military cannot be used to enforce domestic law. It's the same reason why military can't be arresting immigrants when they cross the border. That would be enforcing a domestic law within the borders of the United States. And so in this case, this judge is saying that this was a violation to send National Guard to California. And so now that will be a big question going forward for the Trump administration. Do they continue to push? We've seen them push back court orders in the past. They will likely appeal this. And will they then decide that there is some other justification for sending National Guard to Chicago? One last thing, Anna, what was already so unusual about the idea of sending the National Guard to Chicago is they said they were doing it to crack down on crime there. It's really going a step further than what they did in Los Angeles, where they said it was to respond to unrest. The National Guard has been used in the past to respond to unrest. Sometimes that didn't go very well, like in the 70s during Vietnam protests, but it has been used in that way. In Chicago, to call them in preemptively already raised legal questions. So after a judge is saying they weren't used correctly in California, it's unclear how the White House might pivot or if they'll change their course with the actions they have planned for Chicago.
I would say to another nonprofit founder that platform fees are not the cost of doing business. When a donor gives, they're donating to your mission. So the fact that Zephy doesn't take a cut is something that is beneficial to us, and it makes the donor feel good as well. Zephy's never charges a dime, and they're committed to never charging nonprofits to use their tools.
Who's ready to hatch some cool
Like the video, like the video.
Click here to make your very own monster.
Like the video as you guys come in.
Correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, who is joining us as well. What is the reaction there, Gabe, from the White House to this judge's ruling, and does it force them to change their approach to Chicago and other cities?
Well, hi there, Anna. Good morning. Well, we are still waiting that reaction from the White House. They are certainly digesting this ruling at this point, so we do not have that immediate reaction just yet. But it is unlikely, Anna, that the administration will back down on some of these other plans. They have been talking about sending federal resources to other cities, as you've been pointing out, including Chicago, Baltimore, New York City. And the president this morning even doubling down on his plans for Chicago, saying on social media that he will clean up that city if he has to. Now, the question is, Anna, how exactly will local officials continue to respond? Over the weekend, you had Chicago's Democratic Mayor Brandon Johnson signing that executive order prohibiting local resources, local police from collaborating with federal law enforcement and federal immigration officials. Now, this afternoon, we're expecting a news conference from Governor J.B. Pritzker to talk more about what might come next from his end. Right now, we do not have a timetable on when the White House may deploy additional federal resources to Chicago, but it does appear to be imminent. Over the weekend, Chicago's mayor said that he believed it would be days, not weeks, before the Trump administration deployed more resources there. And from what we understand, there was a naval base just outside of Chicago that would be used for logistical support. But again, it is unclear with this breaking news of this court ruling in Los Angeles how it will impact these plans. That's certainly a question we'll be asking the White House throughout the day on.
So, Alan, how significant is this ruling from the judge in your perspective, and what happens if the administration doesn't follow it?
I think it's very significant, and it's not just California, because it also has been resounding in D.C. about the use of these troops with regards to local laws. So it isn't so much that the president was pushed back, but that the Constitution and the way our government has always run is being upheld. And it's very significant. So the Trump administration may push, and of course, it doesn't fix the harm that has already been done by the troops for all the illegal actions that have taken place. So we're not exactly making California whole. We're just stopping a process in the middle of it, and the administration is likely to push back. But it's a very expensive pushback at this case because Chicago is 3 times bigger than D.C., and he really has not really addressed all the crime in D.C., just some of the wards in D.C., not the whole area. And L.A., as we've already seen on this network, is only a couple of streets, not really the main of all of L.A. So this concept that the National Guard is going to be a subplant for police forces in local government is not a positive result for us. It's costly. The National Guard is away from their jobs, which is costing other companies money and our readiness for military readiness, and it's also just not a good look.
Well, and of course in D.C. it's a little bit different because the president has some authority over the National Guard there. We're not talking about a more sovereign state or a city within a different state like we're seeing with L.A. in California or Chicago in Illinois. Julia, do we have any sense of a timeline for Chicago? Could this ruling hold that operation up when we're talking about moving in the immigration crackdown that you've mentioned?
I don't think it'll stop the immigration crackdown, Anna. We know that Border Patrol is already working to set up a naval base just north of the city as a staging area where we understand that some federal agents from ICE, Border Patrol, and DOJ components like ATF and DEA can sleep as they're surged into the city. We know at least 200 agents have already been tapped to go, and we expect more. Now, National Guard was supposed to support that mission as well as an overall crackdown on crime in Chicago. So the crime operation could be put on hold. We'll have to wait and see what Gabe gets and what the White House says about this ruling. But as far as immigration, they can continue to surge the resources of federal agents there and do more arrests and even try to go into areas where they may have targets for the worst of the worst, or do things like what we saw Border Patrol do in Los Angeles, where they were doing sweeps of Home Depot parking lots, even though that was also ruled illegal by a judge. They still went through and continued to do that, even coming out of a rental truck in a Home Depot parking lot after that ruling. So I don't know that this will do much of a dent in terms of the immigration operation there. Certainly the optics may be changed if they don't have National Guard there to support those missions. But as far as I'm hearing so far, DHS is still pushing lots of resources into Chicago to arrest immigrants there.
And Alan, as Gabe mentioned just a few minutes ago, Chicago's mayor, Brandon Johnson, signed an executive order directing the city to use every legal mechanism to combat Trump's actions, and that includes demanding federal officers follow city regulations like using body cameras, banning the use of masks by officers, barring city officers from collaborating with military or on immigration enforcement, and directing city agencies to submit Freedom of Information Act requests. Do you see this constraining what the administration can do on the ground compared to surges in other cities?
Absolutely not, because it's actually 2 different forms of federalism. It's the separation of federal and state powers that we've already seen this operate in California. But we should also realize that you can't deport your way out of this immigration system problem that we're having. We're just treating the symptoms. We're not really addressing the problems. So what if this administration deports 1 million people and they say there's 11 million people here, and they do one every year, so that's 4 million people out of the rest that remain? That doesn't solve the immigration fix. Congress, which is back in session today, can fix this problem. And when immigration enforcement is just about numbers, we see this problem. And the expense of this, we're seeing it in our colleges right now with foreign students not coming back. We're seeing it in tourism, where people aren't coming to this country to spend their money and the dollars anymore. And we're also seeing the National Guard in D.C. pick up trash and do lawn work that's very expensive cost to the taxpayer. And it isn't the Trump's money that's spending, it's the taxpayers' money from these different states that's being wasted and costing us so much money. Even with the removal of 1.5 million people who said they voluntarily left, it's crippling our economy. So we really need to address the system through immigration reform and not remove the 60 to 70% of the people whose only problem is being here undocumented. If we want to talk about illegal actions, if the Trump administration does something against the court, that's an illegal action. So if we want to do things the legal way, let's be legal on all counts.
Like the video, like the video.
This is the famous footwear that made the record.
Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, everyone.
Feeling a great deal of speculation this morning, teasing an announcement by President Trump this afternoon.
The president's schedule has been pretty light in the last couple of days, and people are wondering what's going on. Douglas Zader has been monitoring all of this from Washington. He joins us this morning as Congress is also getting to return to work after their holiday break, their summer break. Good morning, Doug. Let's start, though, with the president's schedule today. We're expecting something from the Oval Office today. What can you tell us?
Good morning. Well, the president has an announcement scheduled this afternoon. That's about all the White House will say about this. Now, Politico is reporting that this is defense-related. There's been a lot of speculation because the president's been not completely out of sight, but has been kind of uncharacteristically quiet in recent days. You know, he had that marathon, a 3-hour cabinet meeting last week, which was really something. I mean, just the length of this thing got a lot of attention last week. And then since then, relatively quiet as far as the public schedule is concerned. We did see, there's been some speculation about his health. we certainly saw him yesterday as he was returning from his golf course after playing golf, so he seems to be fine. But again, there is this report from Politico that this may be defense related as the White House gets ready to have him come out this afternoon. I believe that's at 1 o'clock Central Time today.
And Doug, the other big topic today is Congress reconvening today. What are some of the tasks that are top of mind for Congress today as they get back together?
Well, for Congress in the whole, I mean, they have to figure out a funding deal to prevent a government shutdown at the end of the month. So September 30th, we could see a partial government shutdown. We've certainly been at this juncture a number of times in the past. Generally, this is resolved before we actually see a shutdown take place, but you never know, and we've certainly seen shutdowns before. The issue they're running into is really kind of a lack of trust on both sides. Republicans say that Democrats are trying to block their funding efforts. Democrats say they want to preserve government funding. They don't want to see any kind of cuts anywhere. So, therein you have the recipe for a possible shutdown, although it's generally in the best interest of both parties to avoid a shutdown because you never know which way the blame is going to fly there. So we'll see if cooler heads prevail and they reach some kind of an agreement ahead of this September 30th deadline.
Sure, yeah, it is.
Like the video, fair use, reaction clip.
CDC and the health agencies. President Trump posted on Truth Social over the weekend sort of waffling as to whether or not he thinks COVID vaccines were even effective, even though that was just a few days after he said, rightly, that it was a significant accomplishment. And as we've said on the show for a long time, truthfully, it should be the first exhibit at the eventual Trump Presidential Library. It won't be. But now he's running away from that. Now,
confident prediction.
Yeah, I feel good about that one. But he's running away from it yet again. And what we're seeing here endanger every American's health. And that is stark language and feels true for what we're seeing from Bobby Kennedy and the changes to the CDC and the like.
I mean, they're dramatic. This turning out to be a flashpoint of something we talked about last week, which are these different signs of war and increasingly vocal resistance in a way. I hate the hashtag resistance, but the reality is of voices, the remaining voices of who are not people that are part of the Trump 2.0 loyalty oath cadre, right? Which has been the biggest difference between Trump 1.0 and 2.0 is the weeding out of people who were there, either career public servants or people who would come in as appointees to try to in some way maintain order, maintain historical perspective, maintain institutional integrity. Those people are now largely gone. The ones who remain increasingly were the targets of Donald Trump, people at the highest levels of the CDC below Bobby Kennedy, people at the Federal Reserve Bank who are being targeted by him, are increasingly making it very clear that they will not go quietly. And I think that's an important trend story. The other question, the question that Joe, Mika, and I talked about last week, which is Donald Trump, we often ascribe an irrationality to, which is sort of whoever's the last person in his ear often is what he ends up repeating. There's this other piece of Donald Trump, which has always been a very cold and calculating, a very clear-eyed perspective on who his political base is. And one of those two things is happening right now, or maybe both in some sense with the question of COVID vaccines. If it's the cold-eyed rational in his sense, he's made some kind of calculation that the anti-vaxxers in his base are more important than the rest of us in history. If it's just as the last person in his ear, the conspiracy nuts have not in his head.
I think it's more confusing.
One or the other.
I think it's more confusing than that because this is his legacy.
I know.
Versus his base.
I know.
And I think Donald Trump is usually not put in that position. I think at the end he will choose his legacy. He'll play both sides, right? Choose his legacy. I think, though, one thing that I've heard from the White House is that he can't believe his luck. He's like, first they give me the southern border. Right? They give me the wall. Now they're giving me crime. He's like, I can't believe my luck. Democrats, and we talked about this before. Like 54 people shot in Chicago this weekend, 7 people killed, and you have the mayor saying, oh no, I don't need more police officers on the street. And then you've got the governor, pushing back against any help. Of course, nobody wants a federal takeover of Chicago. Nobody wants federal troops in Chicago. But at the same time, Democrats should be able to split the difference by going, yeah, it's really bad when 54 people get shot in a single weekend, and this is a decade-long problem. Let's talk about how we get tougher on murderers. That's not hard for Democrats to do. It shouldn't be hard for Democrats to do, but it is.
No, and I think the strategy Democrats has not been able to use wisely is that when Trump takes a position that is out of bounds, in the opinion of many Americans, like federal takeovers of cities, rather than just be the polar opposite, come in the middle and say, no, let's work together, Mr. President. Why don't we sit down?
Put the onus on him.
Put it on him.
If he doesn't work in the middle, they go, come on.
Like the video.
End up with a weekend like we have, which no one wants and no one could justify. Then you seem like, I told you we need to work together, rather than him saying, look at what you're dealing with here. It's me against them. And I think that we've got to be able to nuance that a lot better.
And John, this is a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about taking Trump
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
Talking about taking Trump out of the equation, right, as far as politically. Yeah. Stop fighting Muhammad Ali when you can fight Chuck Webner, right? Yeah. So say we have this crime problem, and don't let Trump get you off your game, right? Instead of going, we're worried about the dignity of people in Chicago, and the same weekend that 54 people are shot. Don't feel like if you're talking about getting tough on crime, you're helping Donald Trump. And that's a false choice that Democrats often put themselves into that hurts the Democratic Party.
Well, first, I 100% agree that just denying that there's a problem, especially in the context of some of the things that happened in Chicago last weekend, is a sensible strategy. It's not. I think that some of these governors and mayors, faced with the possibility of federal troops being put on their streets, feel a sense of alarm about what's going to happen. They should be able to do two things at once. I agree with you,
and that's why the Rev is talking about partnerships.
I agree with you. Yes. Well, if there was any evidence that the White House wanted partnerships, I think,
and that's why the Rev says you set them up. You're giving me false choices. Now we're talking about setting the president up by saying let's have a partnership, and when he refuses, right, then the onus is on him.
We're not in disagreement about the notion that the right politics here is to say, yes, we have a problem. Yes, we would like to have a partnership. I think this is what Westport did very effectively, right, which was, of all these governors, the one who's played this the most adroitly has been Governor Moore, who basically said, hey, Donald Trump, we've made a lot of progress here. Why don't you come to Baltimore and take a ride around with me and see the progress we've made, knowing that Donald Trump would not take him up on that. I agree with that. That's a more adroit position to land in. I got a little bit lost because I thought we were talking about COVID and the COVID vaccines at the very top, and we went into crime. Those are obviously two different issues. And Joe, I just wanted to clarify your point, which is, that you said you thought that Trump would end up opting for his legacy rather than opting for his base. Like, it seems like he's going the opposite direction when it comes to how he's handling the CDC and what he's now putting on True Social. So I'm just curious I haven't seen any indication of that. I'm curious what you're seeing. I think he's going to go back that direction.
I think what I see is when you say, hey, I'm going to ask the experts, I'm going to ask the scientists to weigh in here. When all the evidence is, right, and Donald Trump will even say this when he doesn't have a microphone on. Operation Warp Speed was one of the greatest scientific achievements, like in a generation. So I'm just, and we always talk about any presidential library he does, the first hallway should lead to an exhibit where you're saying, this is how Operation Warp Speed, which people said couldn't be done in a decade, we did it in 9 months and saved tens of millions of lives, re-opened businesses in America across the world. Victory, victory, victory. I don't know how easily he hands that legacy away because of trolls on X.
I agree, and that should be number one on the presidential resume, if you will. But to this point, to what John said, he hasn't yet. He has distanced himself from it. When he got booed at that rally that we talked about a few years ago, rare moments where a Trump crowd turned on him. And now we see on social media, days after he did tout it in the cabinet meeting, he did, in that 4-hour meeting. He's like, hey, this is an important thing. He's now backed off that again. So we have to, and we've seen the accompanying moves at the CDC. So it's an open question where he'll end up. But he's not leaning that direction.
Can I ask a question? Like, I don't understand the loyalty to Bobby Kennedy Jr., who I think most people were warning at the beginning would be the worst cabinet officer, other than the DOD guy.
I think that there's a couple things here. There's been reporting on this. We reported at the time. During the campaign, Trump told people around him he was very enamored with the idea of a Kennedy name. He's someone who loves legacy. He loves dynasty. He's always wanted acceptance from the elite.
I don't think he's part of the Kennedy family. They have basically...
Well, they pushed him out, but
genetically speaking, he's part of the Kennedy.
I know, but...
He's still the son of Bobby Kennedy.
Yes, that's right.
And that...
So you think it's a Kennedy
mystique? I think it's a Kennedy mystique. I think it's a little bit of a sticking it to Dems, like I've taken one of yours, even though this Kennedy has not really been a liberal Democratic Kennedy in a while. And I think it's the mystique. Like, look, even a Kennedy is working for me. That's what one of his aides told me during the endorsement period.
Well, if you remember, the earlier period of that was that they were terrified that Kennedy would be the one third-party candidate who could kill off votes for him, which goes back to our questions about political calculation. The size of the anti-vax movement in America, which is not anything like a majority, but is a healthy chunk of the MAGA base, and growing, seems to be something that Trump seems to be interested in catering to. And just to make the point, Mika, that you just nodded to a second ago, again, if I saw Trump making the move, which is, hey, let's just ask the scientists. The people at the CDC are the scientists. Yeah. The people that he's backing Bobby Kennedy on having fired. I mean, they're not the only scientists, but they are some of the most respected scientists in this field. So I find it. I'm 100% with you. What Lemire said at the top of the show, it should be Operation Warp Speed. The first exhibit, it should take up a whole building of the Trump Library if there ever is one. But right now, I don't see any indication that that's what Donald Trump wants to build his legacy around. I guess that's what surprises me, that he's allowing, that he would allow RFK Jr. to push him around on this. Mr. Bear Eater, worming his head, whack job. Yeah. I find it hard to believe that Donald Trump, Rev, I mean, you've known him longer than anybody. I find it hard to believe that he would let this guy undermine his greatest legacy.
I don't think he's looking at the guy. I think he's looking at the brand. I remember when he won the election in 2016, and I came on right here on Morning Joe about 2 days later, and I said, you have to remember, Donald Trump was an out-of-borough guy, felt rejected by the Park Avenue crowd that ate breakfast at the Regency and went to lunch at the lounge at the at whatever Four Seasons restaurant. Right. He was a reject by that crowd. And I went on to say that's how he appealed to voters, and I was explaining why I thought he upset the election. When I got off the air, about an hour later, I got a call from Donald Trump. Al, you got me. You know them girls, so-and-sos never looked up, never respected me. Can you believe I'm president of the United States, not president-elect? I said, I'm having a hard time believing that. But he called me because he knew. Because you knew. And because I knew it. I was an outsider to the, quote, black establishment, so we knew each other. I think the fact that he can say, I have a Kennedy, is like somebody that grew up poor saying, I have a Cadillac. He sees a Kennedy there, and he's willing to bend over. I think the dessert he gets on that is he also brought a certain amount of voters with him that he had organized, because Kennedy was getting some voters, and I think it was a plus for Donald Trump.
That's right. Literal Park Avenue. The Kennedys, the apartment on Park Avenue. It is that legacy, and it's the idea that they now work for him. That's why. Yeah.
Like the video, fair use, reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in. Like the video as you guys come in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Please hit the subscribe button. Let's continue, fair use, reaction clip.
It's frustrating and sometimes a bit removed from one's day-to-day life. But then the guardrails that we've taken for granted begin to topple, one after another. A National Guard unit deployed to a city that never asked for it. Key parts of the nation's electoral process attacked as illegitimate. Rulings of federal judges shrugged off as optional. Neighbors disappeared into ICE vans. Critics and political opponents suddenly faced with criminal probes. The media behaving in ways designed not to trigger the ire of the ruling party. Each new abuse is justified as temporary, necessary, even an emergency. Until one day, it's not temporary at all. Until one day, the justifications stop altogether, because once power is absolute, it no longer feels the need to explain itself. At best, each assault may seem like an outlier until the day you wake up and realize the system itself has become unrecognizable. Well, that's where we are, right now. It's not where we're headed, it's where we are. The tragedy of what's unfolding and the danger of what's ahead will be compounded if American citizens en masse, all of us, do not recognize this moment for what it is. Understandably, unless it touches you directly, it's easy to say sometimes to miss what's being taken away. We've been telling ourselves the courts will stop it. Congress will step in. Surely someone will draw the line. Yet one by one, those lines have already been crossed. Just look around. Last night, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker had to publicly rebuke President Trump's reported plan to send military troops into Illinois. Pritzker made clear Illinois has asked for no such help. Doesn't need that help. There's no emergency on the ground. His warning was blunt. Trump is, quote, attempting to manufacture a crisis, politicize Americans who serve in uniform, and continue abusing his power to distract from the pain he is causing working families, end quote. That is the governor of one of America's most populous states, sounding the alarm that the president of the United States is turning the nation's military into a domestic political weapon. And he's right. This is not about public safety. It's about flexing power, teaching dissenters and political opponents a lesson, normalizing the use of troops against Americans. In the nation's capital, hundreds of federal troops now patrol the streets alongside ICE and DEA and FBI agents, ticketing residents for minor offenses like broken taillights. Federal troops policing petty crime on America's main street. Think about that. Crime may be statistically down, but intimidation is way up. The police state is here, and that's the whole point. D.C. restaurants and bars report business down by 1/3. What Trump is doing is designed to bleed blue cities dry economically. Meanwhile, red state governors are planning on sending hundreds more Guard troops into the Capitol. Soldiers who, by the way, have no training in urban policing. Donald Trump is threatening to eliminate mail-in ballots and voting machines, the very infrastructure of elections, proudly parroting a line that Trump said Putin used with him that, quote, you can't have an honest election with mail-in voting, end quote.
Can you imagine quoting Vladimir Putin about free and fair elections? This, by the way, all as Homeland Security announces plans to hold election security funds hostage unless states accept Trump's new rules. Secret voter databases, citizenship checks on poll workers, and untested systems that most states can't implement in time. What Republicans label election security is the classic playbook of the strongmen. Tilt the playing field toward yourself and lock yourself into power. Doesn't stop in Washington, D.C. Across the country, Republican-controlled legislatures are dismantling the last avenues of direct democracy, citizen ballot initiatives. In Missouri, voters raised the minimum wage. Lawmakers gutted it. In Arkansas and Florida, new laws make it harder for grassroots petitions even to reach the ballot. Across the country, roughly 40 bills to restrict civilian initiatives have passed at least one legislative chamber this year, according to a review by the Associated Press. Most of these measures, the AP notes, are coming from Republican lawmakers in states where citizen petitions have been used to put abortion rights, marijuana legalization, or other progressive initiatives on the ballot. The message is clear.
Like the video, fair use, reaction clip.
110 pounds.
Like the video as you guys come in. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Please hit the subscribe button. Continue to get the likes up. Thank you.
Administration has ordered done in Washington, D.C. to other cities in our country. Officials everywhere are wondering, are we next? Here is what Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner had to say about that and the possibility of federal overreach coming to his city.
We have another very important tool, and I want the public to hear this, and I want them to understand that you are not alone. And that important tool is called state prosecution. The President of the United States has zero ability to pardon someone who is convicted in state court. If you have people coming in, military, ICE, whoever it is, acting beyond their legal authority, they can be prosecuted, assuming they commit crimes, in state court. And they cannot be pardoned by the President, which means they get to tell a Philadelphia jury exactly why it is that they thought they could invade this city, and they get to bear the consequences, whether they are handcuffs, a jury trial, or a jail sentence. That's what they get to bear. I ain't backing down.
Joining us now is District Attorney for Philadelphia, Larry Krasner. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, I'm delighted to be here, Nicole.
Now, you are speaking the only language that over the last 9 years, and maybe before, Donald Trump seems to respond to, and that is strength. And I wonder if it's intentional. I mean, if you're intending to scare him away from messing with your city and your state.
Well, you know, one thing I know for sure is that crooks don't like honest prosecutors. That's kind of how it's always been. We're talking about a guy who has 34 felony convictions, who's tried to overthrow the government with an insurrection previously, who keeps making noises about doing it again. He is a wannabe dictator, and there is a lot of research that indicates that the way you defeat dictators is you show that you're not afraid, you talk tough, and you ridicule them. I mean, the fact is he is ridiculous in many different ways. You know, I really want to applaud those blue state governors who are out there being loud and proud. I'm in a red state, okay? I'm in a blue city. What I need as a Democrat is more of my Democratic electeds, and most importantly, more Democratic voters in all states to come out and be very plain and very direct. We are not going to have anybody, no matter how wealthy or how powerful, come into Philadelphia, come into other American cities and commit crimes. If they do that, they need to have a consequence.
I mean, I think you just so profound what you just said. I mean, you're in a blue city in a red state. I think you could say that about a lot of other political dynamics. But say a little bit more about how the facts and the strength actually speak well beyond the borders of your blue city. Everybody hears strength, and most people respond to it.
Well, you know, if you think about it, Donald Trump became president completely unqualified, never having been elected to anything, okay? What he enjoyed was kind of an outsider status, and he enjoyed it partly because Americans don't really trust elected politicians. They do not feel that government has worked for them. He, of course, is a grifter, and he's basically been selling a bill of goods to people who, sadly, at least some of them, went for it. But there is power in being in a somewhat outsider position, even if you're a recent elected. There is power in going to a town hall and speaking up. You know, the Democratic Party can be seen as a bunch of elected officials and political operatives, or it can be seen as all Democratic voters, and most importantly, all potential Democratic voters. Everyone listening to this show, every single one, never having entered politics or run for anything, has the ability to either go to a town hall or demand a town hall, demand it of a Democrat, demand it of a Republican. Get them out there, make them do something. We should not be looking at a scenario where so many elected Democrats who are in red states are afraid to speak up, where so many ambitious careerist politicians are afraid to speak up. I mean, let's be real. We have been through this before. The Civil War, the Red Scare, World War II. We have been through this before. We are up against basically the equivalent of our historic enemies. I could get into the details, but you know them. And we simply have to be willing to fight and realize that there is a war over democracy happening right now. And if we dig in and we are proud and unafraid of the consequences, we will show our power. And that goofball will crumble.
Why do you think it's so difficult for rank and file Democrats to speak this? I mean, and I want to point out and applaud the outliers, and that's why we keep covering them. Gavin Newsom of California, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Wes Moore of Maryland. But what is it in sort of the DNA of a Democrat that can have, you know, the public is overwhelmingly unhappy and unsatisfied with Donald Trump's presidency 7 months in. He's got about 37% approval rating. He's underwater on issues like immigration and the economy, down in the low 30s on two issues that were once his political strengths. What are the sort of constitutional, and I don't mean the document, but what is it in the DNA of a Democrat that makes it difficult to fight a street fight politically?
Well, I don't think it is difficult for Democratic voters. I don't think it is difficult for people who have come to politics not as their primary career, but I think there are a lot of careerist politicians who a long time ago tilted towards Republican light. They tilted towards being corporate Democrats who were basically chasing the money because, you know, increasingly politics has been about money, didn't understand that you can actually win with the power of your message rather than the power of your wallet. And so, unfortunately, for way too long, the Democratic Party has not said obvious things. Let me just give you one, okay? It is a fact for the last 25 years, Republican states have been far more dangerous in terms of homicide than Democratic states. It's actually 133% more dangerous. The homicide rate in Republican states is 133% of what it is in Democratic states, which means Republicans are awful at public safety. And yet, Democrats have never said that. Never said it. I mean, honestly, why am I the one saying it? Shouldn't we have been saying this 25 years ago? So they have let Republicans falsely steal the mantle of being for public safety and capable at it when they're terrible at it. There are so many examples of things that are simply true that Democrats could say that would have power, but unfortunately, I don't know, somewhere in political operativeville, this got lost.
Well, I think the other example is the economy. I mean, the economy, now we have enough data. The economy does better when there's a Democrat in the White House. I mean, what I think is interesting as an ex-Republican is that Republicans have none of the facts, but all of the political persuasion. The Democrats have all the facts plus public opinion, and they seem to struggle with the fight. How would you advise them to, again, go out and bridge that gap?
Well, you know, part of it is to empower the voters. It's one thing that Trump did very effectively is he brought out a whole lot of people who had white hoods in their closet or, frankly, serious mental illness who believed that the country was run by reptiles and that there was, you know, all kinds of madness going on in a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C. He found them. The Democrats, meanwhile, and this is my party, but the centrist Democrats spend their time saying AOC is bad. AOC is not bad. And the 9 million people who follow her on social media are not bad. Their votes are necessary. And if those votes were actually enlisted, embraced, if the tent grew, if the Democratic Party could embrace its future, there would be massive turnout of young voters, black voters, brown voters, broke voters, who right now don't really know what to do, some of whom are gravitating towards Trump because they're not hearing from the Democratic Party what they should have heard a long time ago, which is that we are not a corporate party. We are not the party of Wall Street. We are a party for working families. That's where we always should have been, and that's where we need to be. So, I mean, honestly, a very basic part of it is Democrats, if your Democratic elected official doesn't know how to speak up loudly, proudly, and without fear, then we need a different Democrat in that position. That's really where it is. And if you are a voter of what...
Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for supporting the channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being here. Don't forget, there's memberships over there. Don't forget, we're trying to hit 50K, so please hit the subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships, and research. Fair use is use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged in our opinion and for entertainment purposes only. Don't forget, focus on healthy, safe relationships. Be around people that's loving, kind, and respectful. Have a great day. Goodbye.